our dreams come true. I know that without my girlfriends, my life would be not nearly as rich or rewarding or as fun. And forgive my breathtaking cheekiness, but they really are the wind beneath my wings. When Maria asked me to come to this extraordinary gathering and talk a little bit about resilience with you today, it was a complete no-brainer, because as I look back on my life and on my career, it becomes abundantly clear that I guess in many ways I've become a poster child for resilience. Starting out in this business, I'm sometimes not even sure how I was able to keep on going. I had no Bengali who took me under his or her wing, no encouraging news director who said to me, you know, kid, I think you've got real potential. In fact, quite the opposite. When my first on-air opportunity at CNN came along, I fantasized that this would be the first big break I'd later describe in my best-selling autobiography. Instead, it morphed into my own little Stephen King novel. I was asked to do a live report very early the following morning, previewing the president's schedule and the White House lawn. And before my debut, I stayed up all night, practicing in my full-length mirror on the door of my bedroom in Arlington, Virginia, speaking very slowly and deliberately into my hairbrush. I got into position the next day and was waiting patiently for the commercial to finish when I heard two incredulous voices in my earpiece. Who is that girl? One anchor asked the other. I don't know, he replied, but she looks like she's about 16 years old. When the anchors later threw to me, I sounded even younger than I looked, explaining, President Reagan is beginning his day with a meeting in the Oval Office with his National Security Advisor, Vladimir Brzezinski. I was so appallingly bad. The president of CNN at the time, Lee Schoenfeld, called the assignment editor in Washington and told him, I never want to see that girl on our air again. After I had spent years as a local reporter in Washington, I thought I would try to give anchoring a try. Why not? The more skills I had, I figured the more marketable I would be. So I asked my news director at the time if I could try anchoring the morning cuttings, you know, those local segments that run at specific times during the Today Show or Good Morning America or the Early Show. And he said, sure. Dear Diary, another disaster. Since I've never really anchored before, I continued to deliver the news in a solemn, earnest, and self-important manner long after the station had gone to a commercial break. When I asked my news director if I could maybe try anchoring again, he said, maybe if you go to a really, 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 really small market somewhere, you could give it another shot. I was crushed. There are enough stories like this to fill several reporters' notebooks. Given all the naysayers who wanted this particular broad out of broadcasting, you may be wondering how I soldiered on. But I think it was a combination of factors. I'm, quite frankly, one of those annoyingly upbeat, glass-half-full people. Experts in the relatively new field of positive psychology would probably say I was hardwired for happiness. You know, the kind of person who's despised by the miserable, tortured, sardonic lifestyle convention. Jay, my husband, in fact, used to say I was born on a sunny day. So maybe I'm genetically predisposed to not let the turkeys get me down. That helps. I've also had a fair amount of confidence my entire life, the product of a father who taught me I could be whatever I wanted to be as long as I did my best. A mother who laughed at all my jokes, and 3 older siblings who are more than happy, or actually make that less than happy, to allow me to be the center of attention. I also had a commensurate lack of confidence in others. I know that sounds terrible, but it was more of a, what do these people have that I don't have, pugnacity. So every time I get cut off at the knees, instead of being dejected, I became more determined. And I knew that the harder I worked, the better I would get. I think in some ways I'm a prime example of what Malcolm Gladwell wrote about in his book Outliers. He said the closer psychologists look at successful careers, the smaller the role innate talent seems to play, and the bigger the role preparation seems to play. In fact, citing the Beatles, he wrote as a prime example, researchers have settled on what they believe is the magic number for true expertise. 10,000 and hours. So while I was being told I would never make it, I kept toiling away, logging hours, and improving. And suddenly, the future got brighter. Dear Tim Russer, who is really one of the finest people I've ever known, called upstairs to the local newsroom where I was working in Washington and said he would like to see me in his office. Tim, at the time, was of course the Washington bureau chief and anchor of Meet the Press. It was a very exciting day for me. I went down there and he told me he admired my work, especially the way I hounded Marion Barry, the mayor of D.C. at the time, like a pit bull caught on the trail of an alley cat. He told me that I had spunk, and unlike Lou Grant, he likes spunk. He offered me a job as a deputy Pentagon correspondent, and 6 months later, I was a substitute anchoring for the weekend edition of the NBC Nightly News. Shortly thereafter, since we were all in the same building, I ran into that aforementioned news director in the hallway and reminded him that he had told me to go to a really small market if I wanted to anchor, and then inquired sweetly if he considered the entire nation a small enough market. By the way, forgive me when I